So here's our first disciplinary literacy instruction strategy. It's image analysis, which essentially means looking at and understanding an image. To teach this strategy, I first get into what context means, and I found lots of really clever little illustrations to help students understand this. I don't think I need to explain context to you history teachers, but I think that these might be useful in your own teachings. So with image analysis, one thing that's nice about it is that you can practice any type of literacy skill. So things like finding the main idea in details, or identifying speaker's purpose, and so on. But let's concentrate today on a particular type of DLI just for history, which is the skill of contextualizing. So this is a pretty simple activity. You have students look at an image and notice everything that they can about it. They practice their contextualizing skills, and I created a graphic organizer to promote those habits of mind. Another thing that's really nice about this strategy is it lends itself really well to group work and discussion, because as we know, fostering those oral language abilities, especially academic language, is also a really, really crucial part of what we are doing here. So I talked at length with different teachers and conducted some research myself in order to find out more about what this means. History teachers teach kids how to contextualize. So what does that mean? Well, that means considering things like when and where did a document come from, the ability to compare and contrast that historical context with our own historical context, and also understanding how historical context affects the content of an image. And then I also like to add the skill of creating questions, especially for discussion, because again, so much of what I like to do is go back to that academic accountable talk. So let's take a look at this example of a historical image that is very offensive. I'm sorry, I did not give a trigger warning first. This is a piece of propaganda from 1940. So the graphic organizer looks like this, and if I'm planning ahead, I would give students or groups a copy of the image itself, and then the graphic organizer with a tiny picture of the image in the middle. I wouldn't just hand this paper to students with this teeny little image to analyze. I can foresee a lot of pushback with that. But I think it's helpful to have things side by side, so I would not put the image on the back. So this graphic organizer is based on the idea of the window frame, which I learned about in depth and complexity icon training. However, I created my own little icons that I would hope could also be used when using some annotation strategies. So students can work independently or together. Of course, you got to assess what they need and what's going to be best, but they just answer these questions. So, yeah, they're considering the time and place. They're considering what was different and the same about that context. They are thinking about how circumstances affected the content of the image, and then they are asking questions that this new information raises. So at this part in the presentation, I would ask the participants, the teachers, to engage in an example of this activity themselves. So one thing that I really like about this strategy is that it makes rigorous content accessible to all kinds of learners that struggle with reading printed words for whatever reason. You know, any English learner, no matter what their ability, can look at a picture and practice those skills of looking into context or drawing conclusions. So I think this is nice. Also, no matter how advanced our high-level, high-achieving students are, there's always further that you can take your analytical skills. All right, so here's another strategy that I've got for you today. This strategy is called found poetry. So the point of found poetry is to practice those close reading skills that you history teachers know are so important. And again, it's a way to really grapple with difficult texts. Like all of my favorite strategies, found poetry is nice because it takes very little preparation and planning, and it's another strategy that you can use over and over again if you want. So you actually continue to build skills, and you don't have to spend time writing new lesson plans or making new materials. So it's a win-win. So here's how found poetry works. Number one, you read a text. Number two, you select just the words or phrases that you think are important. And there are a lot of different ways to go. I'll get to that in just a moment. Then, as with any writing, although technically I think this is more of a reading activity, you publish or share or perform. So this could be a little reflective writing activity. Have kids write a paragraph where they explain, what their poem means or why they chose what they chose. Maybe students give feedback to each other, like in the form of a question, compliment, or commentary. This is, as always, something that really should be totally up to the teacher, because it's more of a management decision. So, this is what found poetry would look like. This is an excerpt from the Gettysburg Address. So a student read this, picked just the words that make some kind of meaning. Come those who may, dedicate this ground here, to long remember what they did here, the living, remaining, take increased devotion, here, the nation, government, the people, shall not perish from the earth. After we read our poems or share our work, you should recognize in poet fashion, which is the snap, right? There are millions of different ways to apply this strategy. You can have kids work for a long time on something that is visually pleasing and beautiful. Ask students, sorry, the formatting's a little off here. Ask students to select and rearrange words to create something new. So this student, it's our fear of vague optimism found our battles, 4 years and 2 doors next. That was the summer we were never tempted to remember. That is a page from Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, and I think turns into an interesting poem. You can also keep it simple. So here's our Gettysburg Address one more time. And the point of this assignment, I think, was just to pick out just the words that are needed to keep the same meaning. You can do this activity using technology. Found poetry comes in a lot of forms. You can do like the magnetic poetry kit, so students cut out little rectangles, blackout poetry. Here's a link to a description of my favorite version of the strategy, but there are lots of resources out there. You really can go crazy. So remember what I was saying before, that even if you don't consider yourself to be one, you are a reading teacher. The reason why this strategy is useful is that you're teaching students to closely read for meaning, and that always works best when you give them some kind of job to do. So this is a really good opportunity for differentiation. You can ask students to just circle words that correspond to the main idea, or you can make it more challenging, ask them to pick out words that convey a message that is a modern take on the speaker's original intention. You can have kids make their own creative new poems. I think that's the most challenging of all. Whatever you do, you want to be intentional in what it is you're asking them to search for. So tell them, circle the words that have to do with the main idea, and then you can black out everything else. Or even circle poetic effect words like the use of alliteration. So all of the words that start with a S sound, for instance. Or a fun strategy that is a good into for rhetoric is just have students circle powerful words, their aha words, which I think draws on this low level of just sort of instinctual understanding. But as they learn more about the use of rhetoric and the power of words, you help them understand what exactly it is those words are using. Don't forget, when you use the strategy, follow up afterward, ask questions or give feedback, and most importantly, this easy and fun strategy is very repeatable. The more you do this, the more students get the opportunity to really delve into those texts that are challenging, because you're making it fun, you're making it engaging, you're lowering that affective filter and doing everything you can to make those complex texts accessible. So now, once again, I would ask students at my or teachers at my PD to look at an example of a text. I would keep it simple. I'd just say circle any words that might relate to the main idea of the text, and then go back and reread and black out everything else. After that, we'd have a little poetry slam where maybe I'd choose a few people to share their poems, or maybe we'd pick some people at random. I don't know. But I want to share this quote from Allen Ginsberg that means a lot to me. The only thing that can save the world is the reclaiming of the awareness of the world. That's what poetry does. I agree with Allen Ginsberg, although I think that we could replace the word poetry with history also. You're teaching students to reclaim an awareness of the world through the history that you teach them. So today we talked about two strategies, using found poetry to enhance comprehension, and there's so many ways to use this. Don't forget, teachers, you are the expert that needs to decide the best applications here. Same thing, you can always make your lessons more visual. We all can. So what else could you add with what you're already doing? just quickly, I want to return to that hat metaphor. Teachers wear lots of hats too, but to me, the most important hat that you wear is the hat of curator. You put together text sets in order to increase meaning and students' awareness. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and don't hesitate to contact me with any questions.